Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more Esoterica. Today we're diving back into the Theatrum Chemicum Britannicum. This is Norton's Ordinal. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you were unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material, and the link for my book where I teach you to do magic and live responsibly, and the links to get in contact with me directly or to support the channel so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, we are going to dive in and continue our exploration of Norton's Ordinal with Chapter 3. Tunstile was a laborer in the fire. Fire is an allegory for spirit. It is the agent of change. 70 years and more to win his desire. Brian was another with Holton in the west. These were ever busy and could practice with the best. But yet, this science they never found, for they knew not the matters nor the ground. But rumbled forth, and evermore they sought. They spent their life and their goods to naught. Much loss, much cost, much anguish they bought among their receipts which they had wrought. Then made Tunstile to me his great complaint. With weeping tears he said his heart was faint. For he had spent all his lusty days in false receipts and in such lewd assays of herbs, gems, and roots, and of the grass, many kinds by him assayed was, as crowfoot, celandine, and miseron, vervain, lunera, and martagon, in antimony, arsenic, honey, wax, and wine, in hair and eggs, in merds and urine, in calx vivae, sandifer, and vitriol, in marcaphites, tutuites, and every mineral, in malgam, and blanchers, and citrinaceons, all fell to naught in his operations. For he considered not how he did rage, when to God's proportions he laid surcharge. Some of these rhymes aren't going to work, right? I'm trying to make them work where I can, but pronunciation's a big deal for me, and so when I'm mispronunciating things, even if it is with the intentionality of making it rhyme, it's still a big deal for me. Right? Rage and surcharge to me is just not gonna rhyme. Raj, maybe it was pronounced Raj, and then surcharge is a little bit close. Right? So far, this is talking about somebody who is pursuing the wrong efforts. Right, he is laying bare, much in the same way that I did with Mr. Crowley or Mr. Levi or Mr. Agrippa, how they did wrong, right? This is more, he pursued all of these things and he did not find what he was looking for. He listed off 3 people who did not find what they were looking for. There are keys, there are things that you do need to know if you are going to be doing the spiritual alchemy. Right? There are things like, It was exposed to me through divine revelation, but I did get the keys from the divine revelation. I am somewhat of an unusual case in a variety of ways. I have a little bit better, I hate to say understanding, right? It's more along the lines of discernment, right? To see what makes sense and what doesn't. But I'm different, right? My self-reflection goes a lot deeper than most people's does naturally. There's a lot of things to me that I get a little bit deeper than most people do on the things that are not superficial. Most people tend to dig into the things that are superficial. There's all kinds of people out there that can give you the stats from the 1947 Dodgers, right? They can give you the lineup. They can give you all of the stats for everybody that was in the lineup. There is really no point to that, right? It's superficial. This is the stuff that I remember. And so, it's not that there is not something good that can be found from the exploration of these things, right? Chemistry derived from these things. But you will not find in physical alchemy the keys that you are looking for necessarily for spiritual alchemy, unless you are being exposed to the concepts at the same time, right? If you are doing sublimation, you're not going to really make the connection between burning away the things that are no good in you and burning away the things that are no good in whatever the substance is that you are working on. And so it is not an intrinsic part of the process to make that leap. You can, it is possible, but it's not just easy. It's not just something that's going to fall into your lap. Shadow work takes intentionality, and if you don't know that that's what you're doing, you don't really do it. After all this, he thought nothing so good to work upon as should be men's blood. That is a bad idea. I mean, I fully, firmly, and will always stand upon, if you are using blood in any part of the process, you are doing it wrong, right? That is taking away the chemistry side of it, right? If you are doing spiritual things with blood, flesh, semen, hair, any physical emanation from any physical creature whatsoever, if you are using that in a spiritual endeavor, you're doing it wrong, right? Now, I have a wand. This was taken from a living creature, right? A tree is a creature just as well as a dog or a cat or you. Right? This wand came from the taproot of a tree, but I didn't dig up the tree with the intentionality of creating the wand. I created the wand because the tree was already being taken apart. Right? They took up, roots and all, a 200-year-old cypress tree. What was I going to do? Just waste the taproot? Absolutely not. At least one part of that tree still continues today. It is right here. It is a 200-year-old cypress tree taproot that I made that wand out of. But that wand has no intrinsic power for itself, right? It is a tool of intentionality, the exact same as dowsing rods, the exact same as tarot. It is a focus for your intentionality, and so it is something that can be used. You should not kill things with spirituality in mind. That is always going to be a bad idea. You should not use blood for any spell work. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it is your own blood. I don't care if it is someone else's blood. I do not care if the substance came from you. I do not care if it came from someone else. If you are using human essence, that is especially stupid. Like, especially stupid. Especially stupid. That is high level stupid, right? Using and binding any part of yourself into something is probably going to end pretty badly for you. Generally speaking, right, there may be exceptions to that. They are going to be very few and very far between. Those vanishing percentages will be vanishing from the vanishing. Right? Very, very few. There is not a whole lot of anything good that is going to come from blood magic. If that is confusing to you in any way whatsoever, go back to the entire study of Liber 4 from Aleister Crowley. You can see from his life, like you can go back to the first video, the groundwork video where we went through the wiki of his life, and you can see what the fruits will be from that type of magic. Do not do it. Right? Do not. And then again, you have free will. I cannot stop you. It is merely advice. Nothing so good to work upon as should be man's blood. Wow. Till that I said how blood would waft and fume in mighty fire and utterly consume. For Christ his loved and said he teach me, whereof the substance of our stone should be. It is internal. There is no external philosopher's stone. Tunstile, said I, what should it you avail such thing to know? Your sims doth you fail. Your limbs doth you fail. There's no B, it threw me off. For every age, therefore cease your lay, and love your beads. It's high time to pray. There you go with some of that Christianity thrown in, right? No, love your beads, that is reference to the rosary. Again, if you are not doing the things of the Catholic Church, there is a good chance that you would get to die, right? And if he is in communication with someone who is definitely not on the path of higher ascension, right? That is the evidence of these so far. These people that he is referring to did not achieve right? If there's no way that Norton was going to confide in Tunstile the things that he knew, right? And so he had to couch his language in Christianity because Tunstile was not a reputable person. For if you knew the materials of our stone, ere you could make it, your days would be gone. Thereof no charge, good master, said he, if it were sufficient comfort now to me, to know the true materials without wrong of that stone I have sought so long. Tunstile, said I, it is no little thing whereof you should Hold on, this one's going to take me a second. Tydinge. Tidings? You would have true tidings. Okay. For many authors write of this doubt, but none of them showeth it clearly out. For authors, which of this art does write, besought God as witnesses Democrite. And so that is a reference to Democritus, probably. That he unpained would for this world take their souls whom he taught books thereof to make. For greatly doubted evermore all such that of this science they may write too much. And again, I feel like that restriction has been lifted. I feel like I have been directly guided into revealing the things that he is saying has to be concealed right here, right? This is him trying to explain in somewhat couched language to Tunstile that these people could not write this, right? They tried to give as much as they could, but they were bound by oaths, much like the Catholic Church would take your head if you weren't playing with those beads in the right way, right? Just exactly the same way. If Democritus would have written down in plain language, then his fellows, to whom he had taken an oath of secrecy, would remove his head. And it is the threat that is threaded all the way through the alchemical texts. The threat of beheading, or even worse, is definitely in there. And so, again, he is couching language, right? He is saying something, but he's not trying to say it. Each of them taught but one point, or twain, whereby his fellows were made certain, how that he was to them a brother, for every one of them understood each other. And again, that is the secret societies, right? This was pre-Rosicrucian. It was definitely pre-Masonic. I know the Masons may take some exception to that concept, but they're wrong. This was one of the, and first is a big word, right? We have history to look back on. There were several secret societies that we know about, right? We know that Pythagoras had his secret society. We know that Democritus was part of a different secret society. It may have been a offshoot of Pythagorean, but I do not believe that they were concurrent. There were secret societies in Egypt, right? We know that. There were secret societies in Europe, even pre-existent to Christianity in Europe, right? There were secret societies in Rome and secret societies in Greece. Two separate epochs, both of them had their own secret societies. All of them, as far as I am aware, all of them concerned with this, what we are talking about today, not necessarily chemical alchemy, but instead the spiritual alchemy. And all of them depended entirely upon an oath of secrecy. One of the things that I like to talk about is Socrates. We have done some of the works of Plato. One of those was the Apology. The Apology of Socrates is enlightening in a variety of ways. It is through that particular discussion that we come to the understanding that Socrates was a monotheist. He believed in the monad, which was definitely different from the Greek gods that were the current thing. And as a matter of fact, he got to die for that belief. Imagine that. If he was talking openly about something that was against the current control system, they put it into him. But he went willingly. He had the chance to avert his fate in several different ways. He could have left the country. He could have paid restitution, right? There was a couple of different things that he could have done, and he did not, because he said it is better to die for the truth than it is to live for the lie. That is why Socrates took his own life. Now, he was condemned to die, but he took his own life. He had the opportunity to leave, and he took his own life. Because it is better to live for God than it is to die for the truth. And that is one of those things that I am unequivocal about. I am different, however, right? That was not the common practice. The common practice was to couch your language. The common practice was to value your life more than the truth. And we see the evidence of that. We see that happening as we do these studies. That is not necessarily to attribute cowardice, right? Those dangers were very real, and I cannot say with any certainty whatsoever that I would not take the exact same action were I in the exact same situation. But we're not, right? Here in the 21st century, we're in the year 2025, and in this year, you are able to speak. You are able to say things that may be against the current control systems. You can speak out against the government, at least here in this country. You can speak out against any of the religions, at least here in this country. Even Islam, as misguided and absolutely terrible as it is, you can say things and they're not allowed to kill you like they can in other countries, right? And they may happen, particularly with that particular religion, but legally it's not a thing, right? But that is not true if you go to Somalia and you say something about the Prophet Muhammad, say that you say he was a child molesting liar, right? They would take your head for that, even though it is the truth. Right? You can say that here in the United States, and yes, there are zealots who might take your head, but it's not going to be the government. That is the difference, right? That is a major difference. That is a releasing from restriction in a way that is unusual in the entire history of the planet. I say again all of the time, we're in an unusual experiment here. This is an experiment in free will that has not been expressed anywheres. It came closest in Greece, and it was not as full as it is here in Greece. In Greece, there were still slaves. There were still lower classes that were not allowed to participate in the electoral process. They were not allowed to govern themselves, with very few exceptions. And I understand, yes, they had their Senate, but there were very high bars to be in that Senate. It was not the average citizen. This experiment here is completely different in the entire history of the world. And it's because of this experiment in freedom that I am allowed to freely speak these things. You can fundamentally change your entire existence through the things that we talk about here. You can quite literally heal yourself. You can change your direction entirely. You can become a new human being entirely. And it is independent of the control systems. Like, I'm not setting up a control system. I am breaking them down. The only thing standing between you and God is you. The only thing that is keeping you from being forgiven from your sin is your repentance and your dedication. Right? You have to repent from your sin, tell God you're sorry, and then change your ways. That is it. That is the only requirement for you when you mess up to correct that. Now, if you mess up towards someone else, you have physical obligations to that person. If you lied to them, you need to tell them the truth. If you cheated on them, you need to apologize and try to rectify the situation. Taking responsibility for your own actions, right? That is part of this process. Every one of them understood each other, and every one of them was vowed to secrecy. That is something that we are changing. Also, they wrote, not every man to teach, but to show themselves by a secret speech. That is the symbology, right? That is what gets so many psychologists interested in this, even though they will almost certainly not complete the process. Trust not, therefore, to reading of one book, but in many authors' works ye may look. Liber liberam appertit. Faith Arnold, the great clerk, Anaxagoras, said the same for his work. Who that slothful is in many books to see, such one in practice prompt shall never be. Well, right, here comes my pride wanting to walk in, right? I am looking at many books. That is what we are doing here, exploring these things, right? One of the reasons why we are doing this, we have found good stuff and we have found some not good stuff, and we are going through and sorting through and sifting and seeing and winnowing the wheat from the chaff, right? We are separating things quite literally over here. And I am in absolute agreement with this. If you look at all of the books, you will see the contradictions, right? You will see the parts where this guy said this thing, and this guy said this thing, and this guy said this completely different thing, and it is up to you to discern which one is true. It is up to you to put it into practice, to see whether it is actually going to work or not. But, tonsil for alms, I will make no store, plainly to disclose it, that never was done before. By way of answer for your recreation, if ye can wisely make interrogation, I wonder if that is going to be self-reflection. Good master, said he, then teach me truly, whether the matters be soul or Mercury. Soul is the life light of the sun, right? That is the power of change. It is quite literally the personification of the masculine energies, right? You have the void, which is the feminine, the darkness. Then you have the light, which penetrates into it, which is the sun, right? That is the infinitesimal point of light. As large as the sun is, in the context of space, it is tiny, right? And so that is both the void and the infinitesimal, right? Mercury is the representative of the soul. And this is one of those keys that we talked about when we started this. Right? Fall back to the very first video in this particular playlist, and you will find that we said that Mercury was the representative for the soul, but Mercurius is the representative for the spirit. It is both the masculine and feminine in conjunction. And not separated anymore, but both at the same time. That is why it is referred to as hermaphroditic, right? I don't like that, but it works, right? And it doesn't have a sex. It is both masculine and feminine in perfect balance. Or whether of soul or lune, it may be. Now, lune is going to represent the void, right? That is the representative of the night, which is the void, and the sun is the representative of the day, which is the light. Again, two sides of that coin. The binding together of them is Mercurius. This is two opposites, Sol and Luna. Sol and Mercury are two different concepts. One is the spirit, one is the soul. Mercury, in alchemy, spiritual alchemy most especially, represents the soul. It is the part that makes decisions. It is the conscious, it is the unconscious as well, but we refer more to the conscious side of it. Or whether I shall take them all three, or soul by itself, or Mercury alone, or sulfur with them for matters of our stone. Now, sulfur, again, that is the reference for the spirit. That is the reference for the logos most particularly, but it is the spirit in general. The spirit, right, we said it before, let's hit it again. Before the beginning, there was the void, Luna, the night, right? And then God decided to create, right? Before the beginning, there was God, and God was infinite and without form, the void. And he limited himself into the creation to become the creation, the beginning, right? That moment of transition from the infinite into the finite, that is the beginning. It is every single element created, but not yet moving. And then he said, I am the light, and he became the light, and the light was good. And the light, that setting forward into motion from the now into the next, the change, the light, the heat, the combination, all of that is the logos. The logos is represented by sulfur because sulfur is the representative for fire, the chemical change happening in a visible form. What happens here is this butane is changing into other gases through the process of exothermic reaction, right? That is initiated by my will, by sparking the spark. But after that, it is outside of my control. As long as I am depressing the supply, there will be the change. That is sulfur, that is life, that is light, that is logos, that is change. Every single instance, anything that moves, anything that changes is a representative of the logos. And so you do not take soul by itself. You do not take Luna by themselves. The two together are combined as the concept of sulfur. Mercury, again, is the part that's making the decisions. It's making the spark. Not the fire, but the spark. It is keeping the thing pressed. That is your will. That is Mercury. Or whether I shall salt almanac take, or mineral means or stone thereof to make. Here be many questions, Tunstile, said I, wisely remembered and full craftily. You name it, not yet, but only in general. For you must take some deal of this things all. Of these and of other you must take a part, one time or other, to minister this art. Many things helpeth to apt our stone, but two be materials, yet our stone is one. As above, so below. Between which two is such diversity as between the mother and the child may be. And another diversity between them ye shall find, such as is found between male and female. That should say kind. Right? Find ye shall, such as is found between male and female. This two kinds shall do all of your service. As for the white work, if you can be wise, one of these kinds of stone ye shall find. With the white work, you say. With white work? Now that is exactly opposite of the way that I conceptualize it, but bear in mind. There is the light that I perceive as being at the top, right, that is penetrating into the void, which I perceive as being at the bottom. Now, I have my reasons for those designations, but one of them is that this is the color spectrum. Below red, you have infrared, which looks remarkably like black. Above, the limited amount that you can see it, right? The same is true with ultraviolet, right? Above violet. That looks a little bit more like white as much as you can see it. You can't really see it all that well, right? It's really beyond the spectrum. There is only the faint invitation that there is a color there. But this is the process by which I use. The most common is to pull a white energy from the bottom, right? I'm not in accordance with that, but there is another way of looking at that. Whenever you pull this dark energy from the bottom, you use the light, the white, to set the limits upon it, right? It is like encasing, like if we have the pen, right? There is this dark energy coming up, but in order to make the dark energy come up, you have to put bounds around it. The bounds that you put around it are actually formed from the white light. And so it can appear, if you are doing it visually, that you're actually pulling up the white light, when in reality you're pulling up the dark. Now that is me speculating. I do not do this visually. I pull the energies. To me, it identifies itself as dark, right? And that's not dark evil, that is dark formless, right? That is dark shadow side, right? That is doing the shadow work. And when I pull up, I'm working through my vices. When I pull down, which is the other part of the process, the second stone, you pull that down and you work through the virtues. And then, once you have done both of those, you can pull up and down at the same time, run it through the heart, and create the manifestation that you desire. All right. One of the kinds of stones you shall find. That is designating the white work, but it can be the dark work. That is what I would say, with the caveats that we just attached. Now, again, this is my understanding of it. Your rainbow may be exactly opposite. It may begin with red and run down to indigo at the bottom. That is arbitrary, right? I have what I consider to be very logical reasons for every single one of these designations. None of them were arrived at arbitrarily, but that is only my understanding. I can be wrong in that. If there is a greater understanding, I am willing to correct myself in that. I don't think that there is, I really don't. I have not seen any evidence that any other way would be more effective than the way that I've done it. Back to the text. For it abideth fire as stones do by kind, but it is no stone in touching me in sight. But it is no stone in touching me in sight, but a subtle earth, brown, ruddy, and not bright. Again, for me, like ruddy here, ruddy is red. That is what the word means, right? The very first step in this process, after you identify the feminine principle at the bottom, is to work through the red, right? That is the rubido, the reddening on the way to the albedo, the whitening. And so for me, this is exactly the first step. And when it is separate and brought to his appearage, then we name it our ground litharge. First, it is brown, ruddy, and after some deal, white. And then it is called our chosen marcasite. 1 ounce thereof is better than 50 pounds. It is not to be sold in all Christian ground. Hit that again. But he that would have it, he shall be fain to do it, make or himself or take himself the pain. But one great grace in that labor is saying, make it once well and never more again. Old fathers called it a thing of vile price, for it is not worth by way of merchandise. No man that findeth it will bear it away, no more than they would an ounce of clay. Men will not believe that it is of high price. No man knoweth it therefore, but he be wise. I have disclosed a great secret wonder, which never was writ by them which been earth under. Another stone tonsil you must have withal, or else you fault your chief material, which is a stone glorious, fair and bright, in handling a stone and a stone in sight. A stone glittering with perspicuity, being of a wonderful diaphanity. The price of an ounce, conveniently, is 20 shillings, or well near thereby. Her name is Magnetia. Few people her know. She is found in high places as well as in low. It is interesting to understand that there is magnesium, right? Magnesium, I'm assuming, is going to be this. Plato knew her property and called her by her name, and Chaucer referred how Titanos is the same. But in the canon's yeoman tale, saying what is thus, but quid ignoratum per magus igniotius. That is to say, what may this be, but unknown by more, unknown named is she. Nethel's tonsil, now I will truly teach what is magnesia to say in our speech. Magos is Greek. Mirabelle in Latin it is. As is money. Yikos science. Is God. Yewis. What is that word? Wise? Wise? As God is wise? As is God wise? That's gotta be it. That is to say, it is such a thing, wherein of money is wondrous divine cunning. Now, here you may know what is magnesia. Res eris in qualitate scientia divinica mira. These 2 stones tonsil ye must take. I really wish that was going to be in English. Right? Now, I believe that is going to be the dark stone, since he referred to the white stone. For your materials elixir, if ye make, albeit the first time, materials be no more. Yet, many things helpeth, as I said before. This secret was never before this day so truly discovered. Take it for your prey. I pray God that this turneth not me to charge, for I dread A dread sore my pen goeth too large. For though much people perceive not this sentence, yet subtle clerks have too much evidence. For many clerks be so clear of wit, if they had this ground, they were sure of it. Where our Lord hath ordained that no man it find, but only he that is of virtuous mind. Wherefore old fathers covered for great reason the matters of our stone disclosed at this season. So even then, he was trying to push the bounds of the brotherhood, right? Even all the way back into Norton's Ordinal, he was trying to be as clear as he could, right? And he was pushing bounds. There was a good chance that he could die for the things that he said about these two stones that are intrinsic to the process of making the third. And once again, confirmation bias fully acknowledged that it is at least tangentially related to the process that I described. Other materials you shall none take, but only this two pure white stone to make, except sal ammoniac with sulfur of kind, such as out of metals you can find. These two will abide to fulfill your desire. The remnant will void when they come to fire. Sulfur will bring and change colors fast, but our litharge abideth first and last. Ye may not with metals or quicksilver begin to make elixir if you intend to win. Some of their compounds will help in conclusion, and that is nothing else of that, one or the other, but only magnesia and litharge, her brother. I'm going to assume, right, we're making assumptions here, this is speculative, that what is being referred to here is the white and the black, right? The high and the low, the above and the below, right? That appears to be what he is talking about. And again, he had to couch his language, but the white stone is a key for someone who knows the white part of the process. He did not clearly state the dark side, right? He did not clearly state that. He may not have known that. It may not be intrinsic to the process in the way that I believe it is. I believe that it is. I believe that there was a lesser understanding, and now we are coming to a greater understanding. To me, it is inseparable to have both of those. But even though it is not clearly stated, it is kind of implicit to the text that there is a second step, that there is a second stone. He does mention two stones. He doesn't designate the other one as anything in particular. There is a reference to the ruddy, but it gets turned to white, and that is definitely part of the process. And so I am in large part in agreement with this. There are things that are not necessarily exactly correlative in the way that I would like, but they're close enough. But let's go ahead and do the picture too, because, all right, again, I'm not going to have a whole lot to add to this. This is the illustration for those that are just listening. This is the illustration of tact. We have four men here. They are writing, or, well, they're not writing. They're holding, at best, Latin words going down on banners to four people who are toiling. Now, these four people in the bottom, this is the process, right? You have all the way to the left, this is the mortar and pestle, right? That is what this is symbolizing. This is the grinding of the elements. That is probably what is written in Latin right here. Next, you're going to have, what is it? That maybe calcination, maybe sublimation. It does appear that sublimation is going to be a little bit farther. He's dealing with a mortar and pestle here too. So we have a double grindage, right? This is a stand-up one all the way to the left, and the guy right next to him is using one in his hand. This next one, it does appear that he is lighting a fire inside of this thing, right? That is either going to be calcination or sublimation. But sublimation, generally speaking, has to deal with another element being involved, right? Boiling in water for separation as opposed to burning away. And so this is probably calcination in the third step, and then it is probably going to be sublimation in the fourth step. But again, that is just me making assumptions. We have some insects arrayed around here, and then at the bottom we have a mouse and a dog. That may or may not be significant. I do not have the key for that. These things that are illustrating around, these may be beneficial things. Like we have a bee. Obviously, bees are beneficial. Honey is intrinsic to that. But there's some kind of beetle here, and then there appears to be like a mosquito, maybe. Right, and a butterfly thing. There may be keys that I do not have for this. There's only fruit on one side of the thing. There may be some keys that I am missing for the interpretation of the illustration. The text, I believe I've got fairly well. And then up here we have Gerbius, that is a name. Right? Hermes, that is a name. I don't know these other two. R-A-S-F-I-S or S-I-S. And then A-R, Arnoldus, maybe. And again, I don't have the key for any of the Latin. I don't know Latin. But that's going to bring us to the end of this exploration of, this is chapter 3, right? Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment, not too much confusion to somewhat difficult topic. Again, I didn't have a whole lot to expound upon on this. I feel like I have clarified what needed to be clarified from my understanding. That does not mean that I'm necessarily correct as his understanding. It does appear to correlate with what I have written, but that does not mean that it is a one-to-one correlation by any means. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment. Whether you agree or disagree with anything that was stated, put it in the box down below. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership, picking up a copy of my book, or reaching out either for a consultation or services, or to directly support the channel through the links provided down below. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pittstake. Peace.